I still remember the first time I slipped. Not on ice, not while rushing downstairs, just inside my own kitchen. No chaos, no drama, only a quiet moment, a cup of tea in my hand, and then the floor. Fast, hard, unforgiving. And that one fall changed everything. It made me rethink how I walk, how I balance, and what it really means to age well. Because here's the truth, we're not told often enough. Falls are not a part of aging. They're a symptom of something we can actually fix. Every year, over 3 million seniors in the US are hospitalized because of a fall, and the majority of those don't happen outdoors. They happen in bathrooms, kitchens, and bedrooms, the very places we feel safest. But what if I told you that one overlooked muscle in your leg, called the tibialis anterior, is responsible for most of these falls? And what if I told you that strengthening it takes just 2 to 3 minutes a day? That's not hype, it's science. This small but mighty muscle runs along the front of your shin, and its job? To lift your foot every time you take a step, so you don't catch your toes on the rug or stumble over the edge of a curb. But after age 60, this muscle starts to weaken faster than most others. Why? Because of reduced nerve sensitivity, modern cushioned shoes, and a daily routine that simply stops asking it to work. The result? Toe dragging, hesitation, trips that seem random but are anything but. Most people think it's just aging. It's not. It's preventable and completely fixable. This video is not just about a muscle. It's about regaining control, confidence, and independence in your later years. It's about building balance, avoiding unnecessary hospital visits, and extending your freedom to move on your terms. So if you're over 60 or you love someone who is, watch this to the end. Hit the like button if you value your independence. Subscribe for more practical wellness tips designed just for seniors. And if this feels new or surprising to you, drop a 0 in the comments below. You're not alone, and today you're already taking the first step toward a safer, stronger life. Frank Delgado had always been proud of staying sharp and strong long after most of his friends had slowed down. At 70, he still woke before sunrise, walked 2 miles every morning, and never missed his Tuesday game of doubles tennis. He lived alone by choice, not by circumstance, in a small, sunlit house in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Everything in his routine had rhythm, and his confidence in his body never wavered, until the morning that stopped him cold. It was nothing dramatic. No rain, no uneven ground. Just a casual turn toward the fridge and a slip, so sudden he didn't even have time to catch himself. 1 second he was reaching for orange juice. The next he was flat on the tile floor, unable to get up. The X-ray showed a fracture in his hip, the kind that doesn't always heal cleanly after 60. But what rattled Frank most wasn't the pain. It was the realization that his fall didn't make sense. His bones were strong, his legs trained. So what failed? At the rehab center, the answer came quietly from a young physical therapist named Jordan Liu. She looked at Frank and said something that stuck. "You're fit, but you've been training like you're still 40. Past 60, it's not about how hard you push, it's about what you've been ignoring." Frank raised an eyebrow, curious and frustrated. That's when Jordan rolled up his pant leg and pointed to a small muscle running down his shin. "This one," she said, "your tibialis anterior. It's the one lifting your foot when you walk. When it's weak, you trip, sometimes without even knowing why." That hit Frank harder than the fall itself. He'd spent years strengthening the obvious quads, core, arms, but never gave a thought to this one silent stabilizer. And yet it had been the missing piece all along, the quiet reason his foot had skimmed the floor just enough to catch and collapse. From that day forward, Frank didn't just recover, he trained differently. He started small, 2 minutes at a time every morning before breakfast. And what he noticed wasn't just physical strength returning, it was his confidence. That inner stability, the feeling of walking not with fear but with calm control. What had once felt like age creeping in, now felt like a call to train smarter, not harder. What Frank discovered next would help explain not just his fall, but so many unexplained stumbles shared quietly between seniors in waiting rooms and coffee shops. Hidden beneath the surface of nearly every trip, every toe snag on a rug or bump on a threshold, lies a single muscle, small, quiet, but essential. The tibialis anterior runs along the front of the lower leg, just beside the shin bone. It doesn't grab attention like the calves or thighs, but it plays a central role in how safely a person moves through space. Its primary job is simple, lifting the front of the foot while walking. That one motion, often unnoticed until it's gone, is what keeps toes from dragging, what clears carpets, steps, sidewalk cracks. As long as this muscle does its job, movement feels effortless. But when it weakens, that smooth stride becomes a shuffle, and once simple paths become full of hidden traps. Most older adults don't even realize it's failing until the consequences are too obvious to ignore. Because the tibialis anterior doesn't scream for attention like back pain or joint stiffness, it fades quietly, its decline masked by habits like shorter steps, softer shoes, and a natural instinct to move more cautiously. Yet the consequences can be serious. As the toes begin to drag, the risk of falling rises sharply. And the worst part is how subtle the symptoms can be. A pause before stepping over a threshold, a foot catching on a low rug, a nervous glance at uneven ground. These aren't just quirks of aging. They are signs of a muscle no longer keeping up. What's more, the tibialis anterior is especially vulnerable after age 60, weakening faster than most other leg muscles. Modern life adds to the problem. Supportive footwear, while comfortable, often limits the need for this muscle to activate fully. Over time, it becomes disengaged, what some physiotherapists refer to as muscle amnesia. The brain still sends the signal to lift the foot, but the message doesn't land with the same strength or timing. That split-second delay is often all it takes. The muscle's deterioration isn't sudden, but its impact can be. Understanding its role and its silence gives new meaning to everyday missteps. Once seen clearly, this small strip of muscle becomes a critical ally in maintaining balance, independence, and the freedom to move confidently in older age. Once the importance of the tibialis anterior becomes clear, a pressing question naturally follows. Why does it deteriorate so rapidly? Even in older adults who stay active, the answer lies in a quiet combination of biology and modern lifestyle. After the age of 60, the body experiences a decline in peripheral nerve sensitivity, especially in the lower limbs. The communication between the brain and the foot begins to slow down, not because of weakness or poor health, but because the intricate network of nerve endings starts to thin. Messages that once traveled instantly begin to hesitate, misfire, or arrive just a fraction too late. That tiny delay can mean the difference between clearing a step or catching it. This neural slowdown often goes unnoticed until the day it causes, therefore, making it a hidden danger in the journey of aging. Adding to this natural decline is something few people consider: the shoes worn daily. Modern footwear, with its thick soles and plush cushioning, is designed for comfort, but it comes at a cost. These shoes absorb so much impact and provide so much support that the small stabilizing muscles in the legs, especially the tibialis anterior, are no longer asked to work. Over time, these muscles begin to disengage. They forget their purpose. This condition, sometimes described as muscle amnesia, becomes more common in people who rely on ultra-supportive shoes without realizing the side effect. Walking becomes less of a dynamic act and more of a passive movement, controlled by fabric and foam rather than strength and awareness. This passive movement erodes one of the core abilities seniors rely on most: independent, steady walking. What makes the decline of the tibialis anterior so dangerous is how silent it is. There is no sharp pain, no sudden change, only subtle clues that most dismiss: a shorter stride, a softer footfall, a missed step on familiar ground. This muscle fades into the background until one day it fails completely. Understanding this process is more than knowledge, it's the first step toward prevention. Because when the cause is hidden, the solution remains out of reach. But once revealed, even something as small as a muscle behind the shin becomes a powerful protector of balance, confidence, and long-term wellness in older age. Once this silent decline is understood, it becomes even more important to examine what science now reveals about its true impact. In recent years, researchers have taken a closer look at the tibialis anterior and what happens when it weakens with age. The findings are not just insightful, they're game-changing. A study published by the Mayo Clinic in 2022 followed over 1,000 older adults for 5 years. What they discovered was that seniors with weakened tibialis anterior muscles were nearly 4 times more likely to experience a fall that led to hospitalization. These weren't isolated incidents or linked only to those with pre-existing mobility issues. In fact, most of the individuals affected believed themselves to be reasonably active. Many walked daily, some even exercised regularly. Yet 89% showed signs of significant muscle loss in the front of the lower leg, and none had been warned about it. This disconnect between how people feel and what their bodies are silently losing helps explain why so many falls seem to happen out of nowhere. There's no dizziness, no pain, just a slight catch of the toe, a slow response to uneven flooring, or an unnoticed rug edge that sends someone to the ground. That's what makes this muscle so critical and why it must no longer be ignored. What's even more encouraging, however, is that this same study found hope within the data. A specific group of participants committed to a simple daily routine targeting the tibialis anterior. After just 8 weeks, they not only improved in measurable strength, but also experienced up to 60% gains in nerve responsiveness. That means their brains and feet began communicating better again, their balance improved, and more importantly, they stopped living in quiet fear of the next fall. Stories like this help transform fear into confidence. They remind us that the body, even in older age, responds remarkably well to focused attention. It doesn't require intense workouts or expensive equipment. It simply needs the right effort in the right place. When seen through this lens, preventing falls becomes less about reacting to injury and more about reclaiming control. The tibialis anterior, once unknown to most, stands at the center of a senior's ability to move safely and age independently. And for those willing to give it 2 minutes of care each day, the difference can be nothing short of life-changing. These discoveries from science bring clarity, but they also shine a light on the subtle warning signs that so often go unnoticed, until it's too late. While the tibialis anterior may weaken in silence, the body doesn't stay completely quiet. It speaks in whispers. Yet those whispers are often mistaken for what many assume is just getting old. One of the first signs is a subtle change in how the foot clears the ground. When this muscle loses strength, the toes don't lift as high, and the foot starts to slide rather than step. This can turn into a shuffle, a movement pattern that looks harmless, but actually hides a loss of control. Seniors might start taking shorter steps or lifting their feet less, not because they're tired, but because their muscles can no longer coordinate the lift. Closely connected to this is hesitation, particularly around small obstacles. Idori. Thresholds, bathroom rugs, garden edges. What once required no thought now causes a moment of pause. That split-second decision to slow down, to step carefully, is not just caution. It's the brain second-guessing the body's ability to move cleanly. Many also report catching their toes more often, even on flat surfaces. That sense of stumbling or catching the foot without knowing why isn't bad luck. It's biomechanics asking for help. Finally, there's a quiet anxiety around uneven surfaces. Places like grassy yards, brick sidewalks, or pebbled paths create uncertainty. Seniors who once enjoyed long walks may now avoid certain routes, not because of fatigue, but because of balance concerns they struggle to name. What connects all these signs is how easily they're brushed off. They don't come with pain or bruising, so they rarely prompt a visit to the doctor. But they are early indicators of a problem that can grow serious quickly. Recognizing these patterns allows for intervention before a fall occurs. In fact, many experts now say these behaviors are not normal parts of aging. They're subtle, red flags. When addressed early, they offer an opportunity not only to restore strength but to prevent injury altogether. Understanding these clues rather than dismissing them can make the difference between silent decline and active recovery. Awareness leads to prevention, And prevention begins with noticing the details of how the body moves each day. Recognizing the signs is only the beginning. Taking action is where the transformation begins. The good news is that rebuilding the tibialis anterior doesn't require expensive equipment, long hours, or access to a gym. Just 2 minutes a day can begin to restore strength, improve balance, and lower the risk of falling significantly. The first step is simple: activating the muscle through a controlled motion that lifts the toes while keeping the heels grounded. Whether seated or standing, this movement teaches the muscle to engage again. It reintroduces the pattern of lifting the front of the foot, exactly what's needed to clear steps and uneven ground. Starting in a chair offers safety, and gradually, transitioning to a standing version builds real-world strength. Consistency matters more than intensity. Slow, steady repetitions practiced daily create lasting improvement, even in older adults who haven't exercised in years. Next comes coordination and control, two things that decline subtly with age, but can be restored through targeted practice. Walking on the heels, one small step at a time, reinforces both. It wakes up not just the tibialis anterior, but the brain's awareness of where the foot is in space. That connection, called proprioception, is critical in preventing falls. A few deliberate heel steps each day, performed along a hallway or next to a countertop for balance, can retrain the nervous system in powerful ways. Form is key. Upright posture, eyes forward, short controlled steps and natural breathing. This practice is deceptively simple but deeply effective. Finally, there's the neural reconnection, the part of recovery most forget. Strength alone doesn't guarantee safety. The brain must know how to communicate with the foot quickly and clearly. That's where writing the alphabet with the big toe comes in. This playful but challenging movement sharpens motor control and restores pathways between the mind and muscle. It doesn't feel like therapy, but it works like it. Spelling names, tracing shapes, or just repeating the letters brings back fine movement control that has been asleep for years. These exercises, when done daily, cover every part of recovery: strength, coordination, and reconnection. Together, they restore confidence step by step and return control to where it belongs, not in reaction to injury, but in quiet prevention. Aging doesn't have to mean falling behind. With the right habits, it can mean walking forward, steadily, safely, and with strength. As these exercises become part of the daily routine, many seniors begin to notice subtle but powerful changes, and they tend to follow a surprisingly clear timeline. In the first week alone, awareness returns. Movements that once felt automatic begin to reveal small imbalances, and the connection between the mind and the feet begins to reawaken. It's not just a physical feeling, it's the return of presence, the sense that the body is once again listening, once again responding. By the second week, signs of strength start to show. The muscles that once stayed dormant begin to engage more confidently. Steps become more deliberate. Simple movements like lifting a foot over a rug or stepping into the shower suddenly feel easier. There's a quiet but noticeable difference in how the foot clears the floor, especially when moving around the house. By week 4, those changes begin to multiply. Balance becomes more natural, no longer something that needs to be consciously managed. Many older adults describe it as a kind of internal shift, from constant caution to calm control. The hesitation at door frames disappears. The drag in the step becomes a lift. Even small tasks like navigating a grocery aisle or walking across grass feel less risky. The body begins to move with purpose again. This is the point where others may notice the change as well. Family members, neighbors, even friends at weekly gatherings might comment on how steady the gait has become. It's often not the person themselves who notices it first. It's those who've watched them grow more cautious over the years.